Today, I'm going to be sharing some colored pencil tips while I draw this kitten. I shared this on Instagram, but I figured it'd be good to share here as well. My first tip for you today, do not be frustrated by the ugly stages. All pieces go through them, some a little bit worse than normal, but when you hit those stages, look at the one on the left there. It's hard to believe that's ever going to turn into that finished piece. Don't be frustrated with it. Remember, you just need to keep layering and keep building until it looks how you want to. When you hit this stage that looks, well, he kind of looks like a zombie cat. He's terrifying. And while this is a little bit more extreme of an ugly stage than you might normally see in your work, when this happens, just don't give up. That's I guess the point here is just don't give up. Keep layering, because when you give up too soon, and especially in this case, look what I would have missed out on if I looked at that and thought, I better start over. I'm not going to pull this one off. Keep working, keep building, keep layering until it looks how you want it to look. And that's actually especially easy to do in today's project because we're going to be working on pastel mat, which is so easy to get additional layers on. Definitely one of my favorite surfaces to work on. Before we get started, if you are supporters over on Patreon, make sure to head over where you've got the real-time, the over 2-hour version of this tutorial available for you now that you can follow with me step by step. If you are unfamiliar with Patreon, for as little as $4 a month, you get access to each of my new weekly tutorials, in addition to, I think there's like 200 lessons over there right now. And if you want to see if Patreon is even going to be a fit for you, if you head over to my Patreon video library on my website, link is in the video description. You can watch a free 2-hour colored pencil demonstration and just see if that's going to be a fit for you. That link, along with Patreon, are listed in the video description. That's a lot of lessons for $4 a month. Now let's move on to this demonstration. So the first thing that I'm starting with here is my background. And again, this is pastel mat, which I kind of briefly mentioned a second ago. This has a lot of tooth, and I thought when I first looked at the pastel mat, nah, this isn't going to be for me, too much tooth. No, oh my gosh, everything blends out so beautifully and so easily here. So the colored pencils that I'm using are a combination of the Derwent Lightfast, Caran d'Ache Luminance, and my Polychromos, my Faber-Castell Polychromos. Now, as I blend this out, that paintbrush has odorless mineral spirits on it. I am using Mona Lisa odorless mineral spirits. Gamsol works the same, and this is going to blend that out. People always ask me if I'm using water. No, they're wax and oil-based pencils. That won't work with water. Nothing will happen if you use, well, this won't happen anyway if you try to use water. So I'm layering, I'm making my background a little bit darker than what I want that end result to be, because I know I'm going to be putting white on top of it to soften everything out nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and just blend that out with the odorless mineral spirits. And then I think I missed it in the video because, this is very fast. I went on top of it with white again to smooth everything out. Now I'm going to start with the base layers on that ear. So look how dark I went here, and this looks too dark, but I need to go that dark in order for the white to show up on top. Now this is one of the things this sounds like an advertisement now for Pastel Mat. I'm not associated with them. I just really like this paper. But when I go on top of this with the white pencil for the hairs in the ear, watch how well they show up. And if I didn't go dark enough at that stage, then the white really isn't going to show up that well. So you want to look at your artwork, look at kind of what's furthest behind and move your way forward, or at least that's how I like to layer. So what's furthest behind is a pretty dark magenta pink. I've got some Caput Mortem in there, one of my favorite colors, and I don't think I've done a colored pencil piece where I've not used that color. So I'm gonna let the ears dry from the odorless mineral spirits. You can see I laid the blue in on the eyes, and they're super scary. That is not a good stage right now. Now I can come in and start getting some of the little detail in the ears. Now, one of the things I want to point out, when you watch these time-lapse videos, it appears that this is something you can get done in a few minutes or a few hours. Oh my gosh, no. These are very long pieces. This took me, I want to say like a week to work on. It takes quite a long time. Now, the one thing with the pastel mat, it does speed things along a little bit. I will say it went a little bit faster than it would have if I worked on hot press watercolor paper, but it's still a very slow process. So don't feel like it should move along as fast as you're going to see here. Using the odorless mineral spirits, again, just to blend out those little hairs I drew in. We'll blend that out. Now, when you blend with the odorless mineral spirits, make sure you let that dry completely before you go back over it with your pencils. So now we're building up the direction of the fur there on the ears. Now, I'm not worried too much about getting any shading or anything at that point. I'm just kind of blocking in which direction the fur is going and about what color it's going to be, but it doesn't need to be exact because I'm going to go over it with so many other layers. Now here's another really scary stage. This needs to be pretty dark. This part of the kitten is in shadow. It's not that his fur is actually that color. He's in shadow, and I'm guessing whatever he was sitting next to in that photo is reflecting on his fur. So he's probably on a dark brown couch or something like that, dark browns and reds, those sorts of neutral sorts of, I say sorts again, Lisa. How many times can you say that? Those neutral colors, then that is what's reflecting up on him. So again, he's not really orange there, but because of the reflections, it's going to come out that way. Remember, with white fur and black's going to be the same. They really pick up a lot of the colors that are around them. So don't feel like because it's white, just draw it in white. If you do that, it's going to be very flat. Look at it, get a good reference photo and look at that photo. Really pay attention to what colors you're seeing there. And one of the things that I like to do if I'm not really sure what color I need to use, there are color picking apps that you can use on your phone just for color. I've got videos. I'll just link the videos. Those will help. But you can kind of tell how or what colors you should be choosing just by using these apps in the little eyedropper tool. Super helpful. I've also used Photoshop with that. I will link both those videos in the description. That is definitely something you want to check out if you're having a hard time deciding what color you need, or am I dark enough? Am I too dark? That will really, really help you out. So like I said before, I've got to build up these base colors a lot darker than what I want that end result to be, because this is another area, just like with the ear, I'm going to be coming on top of this with a lot of the little white hairs, the little white fur marks. So I need to make sure this is dark enough that when I put the white over it, it doesn't make everything appear too light. I need these dark base areas first. And one of the things I'm really loving with the pastel mat, you do not have to be super careful when you apply these. So if you've watched my videos where I work on hot press watercolor paper, I talk about keeping your pencil sharp, working in small little ovals and circles so that you don't get that grainy, gritty look. Yeah, not really a problem here. So much of the pigment from the pencil comes out onto the paper that when you blend out with the odorless mineral spirits, it spreads. It almost looks like it would with a watercolor paper, where it just spreads really nicely, really smoothly everywhere. No, wait, not watercolor paper, watercolor pencils. Words are hard. So that's really, I love this paper. Now, am I saying that I won't ever use hot press watercolor paper? No, I like both. This is just one of the benefits of this paper. So now as I build up the depth in the eye, notice where I'm putting the lights and the darks. You don't just want to make it a solid blue. And this is where a lot of people get kind of confused with color, and they feel that color is so important. If I just knew what color to make something, if you would tell me the color, I could make mine look realistic too. No, that had nothing to do with the color. I could have made the eyes purple and still look realistic if I had my values right. Are my dark areas dark enough and are my light areas light enough? That's what's going to build that depth and the realism. It has very little to do, making something look realistic has very little to do with the color itself. Yeah, it plays a role, not that much, not as much as values. Get those darks dark enough, lights light enough. If you find yourself thinking, I just need to know what color to use, that right there lets you know you need to focus more on your values. You're kind of focusing on the wrong thing right now. Now, as I come through, look at how nice these little bits of hair, they look so realistic. They go quick. This actually does go fairly quick, but how I can lay them in so easily because I started with that foundation of the dark values first. And I want to make sure that the bits of fur are overlapping and they start building these clumps and clusters. And that is so important when you're drawing fur. Don't make random confetti lines everywhere. It's not going to look natural. Look at your reference photo and pay attention to which direction the fur goes in. Are your brush strokes too long, or in this case, pencil strokes too long, too short? Watch for that, because that's all going to play a role in what that fur looks like. If you make the fur to where they're too separate, it'll look stringy, like he's not had a bath in a while, or he'll look like that zombie cat in the beginning. But you want to make sure you're paying attention to that sort of thing in your reference photo. The fur really should clump and cluster together. They'll group up, they'll overlap. Look at your photo, zoom in on your photo. So one of the things I like to do, I don't print out my reference photo. I used to when I first started with art. Now I have a laptop next to me and then another monitor attached to that. So really I've got the two versions of that reference photo, but I can zoom in and out on my reference photo. I make sure I will go with photos that are really high resolution, and I can zoom way in and see all of that detail. And it makes it way easier for me to capture that then in my artwork. So now moving along, just again, clumps and clusters of the fur. Look how the fur groups together. Now notice the bridge of the nose. That fur is really, really short. I'm not going to sit there and try to force in and make it look like there's fur there. It's velvety, it's short. You don't need to see the actual lines of fur for it to look like fur. That's going back to what I was saying with looking at the reference photo, how long, how short, the direction the fur goes, all of those things matter. But don't feel like you need to force little marks of fur where they really don't need to be. And then that's going to be one of those cases. And you'll see that on a lot of animals where the fur on the bridge of the nose is really, really short. Don't try to force fur marks if they don't need to be there. And if you're like, well, I don't know if they need to be there. What does your reference photo tell you? Look at that photo. One of the things as an artist is really learning to pay attention to those details in your photo. And that comes with time and with practice. You may be at a stage, if you're a new artist, you may be looking at that reference photo and I just don't see what other people are seeing. You'll get there. That takes time and practice. So don't give up thinking, I'm never going to get it. You will, but you need to practice a lot. You've got to start teaching your eyes to see what's really in that reference and not what it assumes or it thinks is there. When you let your brain take over and you stop paying attention to that photo, things don't come out looking so realistic. But that comes from time and practice too. I mean, just keep practicing. You will get there. Don't expect overnight results. Coming through and adding some shadows in between these little clumps of fur. Blend that out with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits. Now, when you get onto your final layers with the odorless mineral spirits, or when you're let's try that again. When you get onto your final layers where you've got lots and lots of layers of fur in there, or whatever it is that you're drawing, lots of layers of colored pencil, I should say. Those final layers, you're not going to need as much odorless mineral spirits on your brush, whether you're working on hot press watercolor paper or in this case with the pastel mat. You do not need many or very much odorless mineral spirits on that brush, because if you have very much, it's going to start removing pencil instead of blending what's there. So what I'll do on these final layers where I want to blend, if I dip it in my odorless mineral spirits, I dry it off on a paper towel or an old t-shirt as much as I can, and then I'll let it set. I'll let it dry out on its own even more before I move on to the artwork. So the brush is almost dry at that point when you get onto these final layers. If it's really wet, it's just going to remove some of that pencil, which is not good. Now we just sign our work, and I'm just using a white luminance pencil here. And that's it. There is our finished piece. Again, if you want to watch this in much slower time, so real time, that is over at Patreon for $4 a month. You get access to this and all of my longer lessons. Do you have a favorite colored pencil tip? Please share it with us in the comments. I don't personally have a cat, but I do have two really excited, really active greyhounds to share with you. Have you subscribed yet? If not, I have a handy button right there. It's round, has an orange arrow going towards it. If you click on that, that'll help you to keep up to date with all of my new art videos every single week. You may also want to click on the bell notification icon thingy because, YouTube likes to make a lot of hoops for you to jump through to actually get notified. I also have an email newsletter that is free that lets you know whatever videos I have going up that week.